Hi, everyone. I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for tuning into today's talk. We are a year-round digital talk series bringing you the best creative voices across film, television, and theater. And today we're joined by the fantastic Connor Kalopsis, who, as well as being a really established actor in the industry, is also the creator and host of 110 Football, which is supporting LAFC. And I was really interested in the genesis of this show because obviously you're a huge fan of the team yourself. And I was interested in how you kind of like first took the idea of creating a show and thinking about the intersection of a space that would really draw in people who were already massive fans of the team, but also potentially draw new people into the sport or into your particular team that you already love.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. But yeah, 110 Football really started off when the team was starting in their inaugural season in 2018 as like a fan page, as like a community site. And over time, I really wanted to create my own content, whether that's acting, hosting, writing, whatever that is. And, I was doing this fan site thing and I was like, we have a substantial audience, and what a better way to create my own content, my own show, than doing it with 110 Football. So I'm thankful to have had the resources that XRM Media has provided for me to be able to produce and act in such a fun and silly show, and it's been an amazing experience so far.
Yeah. And what was kind of the initial genesis of the overall visual look of the show? Because what's really fantastic about it is, you have desk pieces, but you don't just remain behind the desk. You're going out into the field, you're traveling to games, you're using a lot of footage of players, moments from interviews, and really it's like a whole multimedia experience throughout. So what were those initial conversations about what you wanted the overall feel of the show to be like with the production team?
Yeah, we for 110 Football, we really wanted to push the limits to what a YouTube quality show could be. A lot of the times there's podcasts and stuff which are great in their own ways, but we really wanted to see how far like aesthetically and technologically we could push it, whether that comes to like our desk with the lights, the TV background that we have, or like you said, going to games, doing our field segments. We really, push the limits of what a YouTube TV show is normally allowed to do. And so we've had a lot of fun being able to go to places like Salt Lake. We've gone to Seattle, and just to cover LAFC. And as a fan, I'm doing one, acting, which I love, and two, supporting the team, which I love.
Yeah. Well, how do you, you're mentioning that obviously, hosting is a performance type and it is a type of acting. How do you feel that it stretches you in completely different ways to when you're, acting on a show like Outmatched and the way that you would prepare for that versus when you're actually hosting and reading more of a delivery script?
Yeah, it's weird. Most of my experience has just been on TV acting, and I haven't done too much hosting, but now doing 110 Football and kind of being able to mold like a character, a host persona to my real personality. It's been fun, and trying those different things, and being more off script, and being able to pick up things that you just don't do when you're just following the script has been I think a really good learning experience for me, and it's been a blast. And I like I said, I love acting, but I also like just being me, and being able to have a healthy balance of the both is great.
Yeah. And what's the process behind the writing of the show and kind of figuring out those scripts and those moments where it is going to be scripted, like you were mentioning, and then the moments where it's a little bit more playful and off script in the moment?
Yeah, well, the writing process is a little hectic because each show is just based off of the game that happened prior that weekend, and so we're always go that weekend. But when it comes to the scripted stuff, that's usually the desk segments, throwing to the conference standings. We throw to all the different segments we do. But when it comes to analysis, like debates, that's all off script. And it's really pushed my limits a little bit because, coming from just a script reading, acting background, it's not as easy as it looks to just come up with things on the spot. And, I think I've really kind of come into my own while doing that on 110 Football.
That's so fantastic. And, one of the great things is you've worked so much in television, which is such a fast-paced environment. You're often getting the scripts very last minute with that space as well. And so because you were mentioning how, you're really going off of the last week's games, there's not actually that much time to prepare. Do you feel like your work in television has really helped you in terms of the tools that you already had the chance to develop?
100%. I think, coming from something like television to YouTube, it's been a different experience, but performance wise, there's nothing really different. And I think having that really heavy work environment on television is made it much easier to kind of just roll right into hosting. Although it's a different type of performance, I think my experience on television has helped me.
Yeah, and then what does it look like when you're trying to figure out what's the right way to present a segment? Is this a desk piece? Is this a field piece? Do we need to bring someone in as an interview? And especially because you have other cast members that come into the show as well. So kind of how do you all sit there as a team and just map out how you want the structure of each episode to map out as to be?
Well, like you said, that now we have a lot more cast members than we did when we started. There's not a lot of time for each segment anymore. So we've tried to evolve the show into more of an entertainment type show rather than just sports. Now we're doing sketches and more fun field segments, and it's very lighthearted. So the show gets your hard analysis, the fun segments, you get to laugh, and then you get to know everything about the team that happened last week. So you get really an abundance of info, and you also have a fun time in the 20 minutes that 110 football goes on. So speaking of how do we find time to do the segments and which bits we put here and there, we've really tried to limit how much we do at the desk, although we think it's beneficial to have certain parts at the desk. We've really tried to push ourselves when it comes to doing like sketch comedy and that type of stuff.
Yeah, and the dynamic between you and your co-host, Jerry Renosis, is so wonderful to watch the way that you two bounce off of each other and the comedic elements that you're able to pull together because you have that kind of like clear rhythm and friendship. And, he came on board, I think, in 2019, and you'd already been kind of setting up the show. So what was that process in coming together and just figuring out what the dynamic between the two of you was going to be together as co-hosts?
Well, yeah, I mean, like you said, you can really tell the friendship because we are friends. Jerry doesn't come from a background of on-screen, acting or hosting. So it was a challenge for him to get into it, first of all. But I think because of our friendship, it kind of helped him in a way really come out of his shell hosting-wise. And so I think now, as a little time has passed, we've really both excelled when it comes to the back and forth type stuff. And I think that stems to just us being really good friends.
Yeah, and then I also love a lot of the interview pieces that you manage to do, and whether it is out in the field or whether it is a studio interview, kind of what does that look like in terms of the way that you like to figure out what your questions are going to be? How much do you like to prepare in advance versus how much do you like to kind of find it in the moment with an interview subject?
I think when it comes to the questions, it's always important to prepare that stuff in advance. And I think we always want to ask the meaningful questions. We don't just want, just questions that don't really matter. But when it comes to what the answers of the questions are, or just the banter back and forth in between the questions and answers, that's all off script. And I think like I said before, we found a really good balance between scripted and non-scripted, which makes the show just really fun and easy to watch.
Yeah, and I also love that you had your first LAFC player interview on the show recently. Kind of, was that a different process? Because that was obviously a Zoom interview, and it's very different, even just the two of us talking right now, it's very different to like if we were sitting in the room together. There's a different energy that you're able to feel in the room. So did you kind of feel a shift in the way that you had to think about approaching that interview to ones that you've done before at all?
Well, of course, because we had this idea in our heads that, we were going to have players come in, we'd be on the couch, we'd do this fun little setup, but, you have to do what you have to do. And also on top of that, the players were in a bubble in Orlando doing a tournament for Major League Soccer. And so they were out of state. So it was a weird and different experience, but I think we were able to pull it off pretty well. And it looks really good on camera. And also, we interviewed a somewhat unknown player at the time, Danny Musovsky, and he's gone on to score twice in 2 games. So it's been great. We were the first ones to get him on an interview.
It's so fantastic. And then I was also kind of just interested in, obviously you relaunched the show and kind of rebranded it to 110 Football. And I was really interested in, what kind of spurred that decision and what that process was like, taking something that you'd already really built up and you built an audience and connectivity with, and then thinking about the new way that you wanted to rebrand it and represent it to audiences.
Yeah, I think it came really from the idea of making it into a show instead of just a community fan page anymore. And we wanted to make it look slicker, modernize it, and the name 110 Football really comes from the 110 freeway that really goes through Los Angeles all the way to Carson. And it's the freeway that's right next to the Banc of California Stadium where LAFC plays. And what a there's no better name you could have when it's the freeway right next to the stadium. And so we think the logo looks phenomenal as well, and I think it really represents what we're about, the demographic that we want, the team that we support, and also that we're trying to push the boundaries of YouTube quality shows.
Yeah. And, you mentioned the logo for the show as well. And it's, the whole logo and everything is very sleekly designed. And it's something that really carries through the show, down to the shirts that you and Jerry are wearing, kind of the presence that you have on social media. Kind of how important is it to you to make sure that just all of those tiny details in different corners are all kind of branded and bringing everything back to the central core of the show?
Well, of course, it's all about consistency. And when you have that and you have followers interacting online, we can do fun things like Jerry has his segment, Jerry's Give and Goes, where he'll spin the wheel and he'll pick a tweet from one of our fans, their take on LAFC's last game. And it's fun because those people can come from social media, watch the show, and then see their tweet. And that all comes from the consistency from the show to our social media pages to just the logo itself, and it's been great to see all the pieces kind of fitting in the puzzle.
Yeah. And how, do you still have a big hand in what that social media output looks like? Because when you look at it all together, it's very cohesive. It really feels branded to the team and branded to the show, but also kind of has that playful voice that we were talking about earlier that, is the dynamic between you and Jerry. It feels like that really transcends over to social media as well.
Yeah, of course. I was really the creator of the social media account when it first started in like 2018. So of course I still have a very big say in what goes on the social media and on the show. But yeah, like you said, we just try to keep it very lighthearted. We're not here to be hard critics of the team. We do like to share our opinion and debate certain things, but we're here to have fun and always keep the mood light. We want people to watch our show and leave with a smile on their face.
Yeah. Has there been a really big benefit, being that, you started as a fan page, you're putting out YouTube videos, you're really thinking about social media and all of these online platforms, obviously since the pandemic hit and everybody's been at home, have you found that that's been an advantage to you and your team, that you already knew how to connect with audiences in the way that everybody's looking to now?
Well, yeah, because we connect with our fan base already online. And now that everyone's doing it online, we kind of, like you said, have that advantage because that's what we did originally. And of course, we like to be there with the fans at the stadium and really mingling in real life. But you can't do what you can't do. And so we're glad that we're able to have this platform where we're able to do the live streams, the YouTube shows, and continue to post on social media without a drastic decrease in interaction with the fans.
Yeah. And you traveled to one of the games in Salt Lake City recently when they're in a bubble and there wasn't an audience. What was that experience like, sitting in a massive stadium without any crowds and any fans for the first time?
Well, there actually was fans. This was in Utah. The laws are just a little bit different. There's just restrictions to how many fans were there. So I did go, and there was just a limited amount of fans. But I will say it was one of the craziest experiences ever seeing live sports again. Like I've been to almost every single LAFC game in their history. They've only been around since 2018. Almost every single game, and not seeing a game for almost like 6 months. Yeah. It wasn't weird until I got there again, and was actually seeing the players in real life. It made me like miss it even more. So it was an amazing experience.
Yeah. Was it kind of a weirdly emotional experience as well, just being in there in that particular setting, knowing that nobody had been there in person for a game in so long?
Oh yeah, I mean it was weird. It was like regardless of it being LAFC, it was live sports again, and seeing people um, excited to be there just to see live sports, and a lot of them obviously there was COVID protocols in place, but a lot of people once the game started they didn't have a care in the world. You know what I mean? And just seeing that again really was great to see, and like you said, it was a very emotional experience.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to imagine what it would be like to just completely forget everything going on
Yeah.
in the world right now.
Just for 90 minutes.
And then, as you were starting, obviously you kind of shut down the show for a little bit, but you've returned and you've been back in the studio. What has that been like, kind of going back to shooting in the studio, obviously with a very different atmosphere, very different protocols in place since you've returned?
Yeah, well, we're lucky enough to already have a pretty small cast and crew. When it comes to the cast, there's a lot of people already doing remote segments. So Vince and Benny, and Eli, three of them out of like the 6, 7 of us, they're already out of studio. So that's almost half the cast that doesn't even actually have to be interacting with people. When it comes to the crew, we have actually a very small crew, and so a small production compared to a large production, it's much easier to control everything and make sure COVID restrictions are in place. And like you said, it's been a weird experience trying to come back into it, and social distancing even on camera. But I think we've made it work really well, and yeah, it's just once in a lifetime experience.
Yeah, I mean, it looks very seamless when you're watching it. You would never know. And has it made you think differently at all about some of the segments that you're putting together? You were talking earlier about how you kind of figure out the best way to present each segment, because obviously, you can't go to a game and go up to people and be in the middle of a crowd in the same way that you were before. So has it kind of made you sit back and think of any new or different ideas, or really just kind of putting some things by the wayside for a brief amount of time until you're able to do them in that way again?
Well, I think rather than putting things aside or coming up with new ideas, I think we've actually just kind of evolved the ideas we've already had. So, for example, interviews, the idea we originally had like 6+ months ago was, we do the interviews at the couch, and that's where it would be. That's how it would go. But now, as you saw, we did the Danny Musovsky interview via Zoom, and it was just me by myself at the couch on Zoom with him. And then we did an interview with the 3252, the fan base, out on the field, and so we were all separated, and that looked phenomenal as well. So, although we are disappointed that we can't do in-person close interviews on the couch, we've been able to do some really fun things and aesthetically pleasing things on the field and on Zoom, and we've evolved that way.
Yeah, and there's also such a great usage of, we were mentioning earlier, not just player footage, but pulling in interviews and things that go beyond just the moments where they're on the pitch in the middle of a game. Kind of, how do you kind of like figure out what are the right pieces of content that we want to pull into it? Because it's not even something where you just play one clip at the beginning of the show. You're really using it to supplement every single segment that you're doing throughout, which is so fantastic. So kind of that must take an immense amount of time and forethought to put that all together, but also very quickly, because you were talking about how fast the show comes together itself.
Of course, we film on Mondays, and the show gets out on Thursdays. So there's not a huge amount of time to focus on a bunch of little things. But I will say, we're diehard LAFC fans. So when it comes to knowing what footage to put, we kind of know exactly what we want there, here, and there. Our crew, when they first came on board, none of them knew who LAFC was. And so, it was a slow process of them becoming fans themselves of the team. And by now, they almost know as much as we do. So when it comes to editing, to the editing side, we'll be throwing footage at them. They'll be throwing footage at us, and it's a really healthy environment of just LAFC fans who happen to be making a show.
Do you feel like you've converted the entire post-production team into fans themselves at this point?
100%. I mean, if someone's not an LAFC fan on the crew, they're out of here.
Or you'll make them one.
Yeah, I'll make them one.
Is that also the same, in talking about how you just intrinsically know what the footage is? Obviously there's usually a lot of research elements, there's facts, there's statistics, you're looking back at previous plays that a player has made to pull that into the conversation. But is that kind of just the same for you, where it's very intrinsic because you watch every single game, you go to every single game, and you just know all of that off the top of your head at this point?
Yeah, well, I think it's a healthy mix of both. I think, like you said, I've been to almost every LAFC game, although I don't know specifically stats themselves. I know a very large amount of just rough data when it comes to the team. But with press releases and stuff and those statistical sheets coming out, it's really easy to just organize everything just by the data, and it's been great because like I said, we're throwing footage to them, they're throwing footage to us, we're throwing facts to them, they're throwing facts to us, and then it all finds its way down through the funnel onto the show for Thursdays.
That's so fantastic. On a different note, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, some of your acting experience as well. Most recently, I think you wrapped the first season of Outmatched. And, obviously with that being a multi-cam series that's filmed in a studio in front of an audience, what were kind of the unique aspects in how you had to think about acting differently with that in mind versus just being in a studio with a single camera, and how you have to work differently because of it?
Well, yeah, Outmatched was a great experience. That was one of my first bigger roles in my new age, a new like teenage actor rather than child actor, and it was an amazing experience. And I've come to like acting a lot more for what it is now, working on Outmatched, and it's a phenomenal experience, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. But like you said, going from in front of the audience, big set, to small set, no audience, social distancing, it's a huge learning curve, and I've been thankful enough to have the experience on the big set where I could bring my experience onto the smaller set. And so it's been interesting to see how the dynamic works out, but I think it's worked out pretty well.
Yeah. And was it a different experience, because, on that show as well, you're playing a character that you're arcing out for the entire series. You're not just kind of popping in, creating this character in a moment. So did it cause you to think differently about the way that you wanted to not just determine who this character was at the beginning, but really evolve who he was throughout the show?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think when it comes to Outmatched and 110 football, my character on Outmatched was this nerdy kid who's a genius, a quantum like mechanics genius, and as Outmatched was ending, 110 football was just starting. So if you watch like the first couple episodes of 110 football and like the last couple episodes of Outmatched, you can kind of see the character like same, like a little bit when it comes, like, because I was so focused for Outmatched on who I wanted the character to be. And so you could see a little bit of Brian from Outmatched on 110 football in the first couple episodes. But like you said, when it comes to the arc of my host persona, or Brian on Outmatched, it really comes to finding what's funny and what works well, especially with the dynamic of co-stars, and I think on Outmatched it worked well, and fingers crossed that it works well on 110 football.
Do you feel like it was a great learning opportunity in terms of developing a lot of that comedic timing that you've managed to bring into 110 as well?
100%. I'll say that working is the best training. I haven't, at my age now, my last bigger show was The Grinder, and I was about maybe 12 years old. And so as I've gotten older and I was able to have the experience on Outmatched around 16 years old, I was able to pick up more things, when it comes to comedic timing, presence. And I think because of that, transferring it over to 110 football made it that much easier.
Yeah, and I also feel like you've had kind of the best opportunity in terms of TV dads between Fred Savage and Jason Biggs. And kind of what are some of the things that you would learn just from sharing scenes with them as scene partners and watching the way that they worked and approached their craft as actors?
No, 100%. I've had the two best TV dads I could ask for. But yeah, I think it comes to comedic timing was one of the big things. Jason Biggs especially is amazing at that. And being able to work with him and also get pointers from him was something that I'll remember forever. It was a really, really fun experience, and a really good learning experience for me. I've grown as an actor a lot. Like I've told you, not just progressing in the craft, but also just having a lot more fun with it.
Yeah, that's so fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us about your acting and so in depth about 110 football. And I can't wait to see more episodes of it as you continue to put it together.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Connor.